We're back with episode 17 of season 2 called Berserk. We're going to get into this review this time on Energon Entries. Welcome back to Energon Entries, everybody. As always, this is your host, Matt Freites, and I want to thank you for your patience last week. I just ran out of time getting into an episode, and it just wasn't going to meet the quality standard that I like to put out for you here. So without any further ado, we're going to get to the review of episode 17 of season 2, Berserk, and let's get to the episode recap. The episode begins with the Autobots successfully testing a new super weapon called the Negavator, only to be attacked by Soundwave and the Cassettes, who try to steal it for the Decepticons. While most Autobots engage in battle, Red Alert stays behind to guard the Negavator, but an explosion in the control room leaves him injured and paranoid. As the Autobots escort the Negavator back to base, Red Alert's damaged logic circuits cause him to miss a Decepticon sneak attack and grow increasingly suspicious of his comrades. Red Alert eventually teams up with Starscream, who manipulates him into stealing the Negavator. However, when Megatron and the Decepticons arrive, Red Alert realizes Starscream's betrayal and sets the Negavator to self-destruct. The episode ends with Inferno heroically rescuing Red Alert from the explosion, and the Autobots expressing their relief and gratitude for Red Alert's return to their ranks. So right off the bat, I need to highlight the fact that this is an episode about one specific character, and it's about one specific new character, which I really like. I think that over time, the formulaic nature of this show is going to become old, and I like to see some character development. So the episode basically starts with the Autobots showcasing a new invention. They're trying to get the humans on board with it, but of course Soundwave is already there, and he's already there to infiltrate, and it's the most Transformers thing ever. Red Alert is the new character. This is the character that they're highlighting, and he mentions super weapons having been lost to the Decepticons before. And this is a really good continuity point because it's something I've brought up so many times in these episodes, and you see it here, and I really like that. It's obvious that they're trying to establish Red Alert and Inferno as a team. That's a nice development. Obviously, Inferno being a fire truck, Red Alert being part of the fire department, it makes a lot of sense. But it's so obvious to me that Red Alert sees Inferno as his partner, and therefore that's why he asks him to stay there. So this huge battle ensues, and Red Alert asks Inferno to stay behind so that they can save the base, everything that they have put together for the Negavator. In all of this, all of these Transformers are battling, and Ravage is a part of it. The ironic part, though, is the Autobots can't handle Soundwave and all of his cassette tapes, but Ravage actually uses the missiles that you see on his hind legs. You don't see that, and honestly, he has an unending supply of them, which I thought is interesting. So the Autobots that are there with Optimus Prime with the Negavator, all of them seem to be the quote-unquote smart Autobots, or the scientist Autobots, Grapple, Hoist, and then you see some others like Ironhide and Smokescreen. Now Smokescreen is interesting because you're not sure what kind of role he plays. I believe he's more in the security detail part, but in all of this battling, things are getting destroyed, and it's consequences that you don't see very often. And Grapple, in another great continuity pullback, laments about the fact that he would love to build something that doesn't get trashed. I love it because in the Master Builders episode, he ends up building something with the Constructicons. It gets destroyed. He isn't allowed to do a whole lot, so it is nice to see that the Autobots have feelings and that they can remember certain things that have happened in previous episodes, because we don't see that too often. But one of the things I don't understand is, in this show a lot, there is numbers that take place. And it seems like the party that is always in favor with the numbers, and in this case it's the Autobots, they always seem to have trouble. And it always feels like they have trouble with the weirdest situations. Soundwave and all of his cassette tapes. Look, Soundwave is a badass, obviously. He's very loyal. But they're cassette tapes, and they're having so much trouble. And Optimus Prime, who's like the most powerful Autobot, seems to be having trouble. And sometimes in this show, I just don't understand how they can't get it right of who's powerful, who's not, how does this all work? And it just doesn't fit, in my opinion, to what normal strategies would be when it comes to these battles. The Autobots should be able to handle themselves a lot better than they actually do. It's obvious to me when I was watching this that Red Alert is more about upholding his duty to protect, and that Inferno, even though they're a team, is more the fighter of the two. He's more impulsive. And you see this impulsiveness come to fruition, and that causes Red Alert to get injured by the missile. Because Inferno, while he does something brave to go out and save his comrades, he also leaves his partner behind. And Red Alert's primary function to detect the Decepticons and analyze situations is something that he is there for. And that injury now has caused a deficiency in that primary objective. And that's one thing, again, unintended consequences. And Inferno's impulsiveness is the direct cause of that. It's also interesting to see that most of the new Autobots and the smart Autobots, it seems, have British-sounding accents. This is so 80s to me, because you have Hoist, Grapple, Red Alert, they all have British accents. Even Perceptor, even though he's not in this episode, it's something that seems so cliche. We would see somebody with a British accent as smarter than we are. And that's why I say you have the smart Autobots, you have the Protector Autobots, and that's where it seems like they all have roles. And I kind of like that. And Red Alert seems to not only protect and serve, but he seems to be very smart when it comes to building things and also in protecting the Autobots. But his paranoia now is exacerbated by this missile damage. Again, the impulsivity of Inferno coming back. Optimus Prime, though, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking he's not firm enough in his leadership. He should have made Red Alert get help. He should have made him see Hoist. He should have recognized the fact that this is not normal behavior from Red Alert, and I need to step in as his leader. To me, he didn't seem like he was firm enough in that endeavor, and I just felt like he kind of let Red Alert down early on in this episode. And so, Soundwave and all of his tapes, they give the Autobots everything they can handle, but they ultimately lose. They don't get the Negabator. And I think this might be the first time in the show, correct me if I'm wrong, that Megatron actually berated Soundwave specifically. I'm sure as part of the group beration, Soundwave has been a part of it, but I think this is the first time that Soundwave has directly failed. And Soundwave is the most loyal Decepticon out there. He is the direct antithesis to Starscream, at least until this point. And so I find it interesting that Soundwave fails, and Megatron is not above getting in the face of his most loyal follower. But Starscream being willing to step in right at that moment of vulnerability is peak Starscream. It's only about taking over. It's not actually about helping the overall cause. And this is a huge fundamental difference between Autobots and Decepticons, in my opinion. Now, during the skirmish that happens, smokescreen smoke can be used to trigger this electronic malfunction. The smoke sticks to the Seekers. That's a neat little trick that he has there, and certainly fits into the role of security that seems to follow him around. But again, after all that happens, Prime has the inability to finesse this situation with Red Alert, and this malfunction that he has seems to be something that Prime's leadership needs to take care of. We don't see Prime generally fall too often in his leadership. We did see him make some egotistical choices in the recent 3-parter that we did, but I don't think in this situation it's a little bit different. You should know your guys. You should know when something isn't right, and Prime just wasn't able to do that. And now, in this episode, they have to waste time with this cat and mouse game because they've allowed Red Alert to get away, and they're wasting time. Somehow, though, this wasted time doesn't lead to the Negabator getting stolen or destroyed right away, but we'll get to that in a minute. And while they're chasing Red Alert, something that came up here, and this is, again, this weird continuity thing that seems to happen, Ironhide going up and having this interaction with a human being, a fire chief, as a matter of fact, and the fire chief seeming like he's never actually seen a Transformer. At this point in the show, they just had Autobot Day a couple of episodes ago, and so for, I guess, somebody in the United States not to know that this exists seems to be just it seems kind of weird. Transformers in this world seem to be commonplace now, so that just kind of seemed a little bit out of place for me. But the whole point of this episode is to play up on Red's paranoia, and Starscream does that, and does so in a way that he wants to take over the Negabator so that he can take over the Decepticons. And so he very smartly plays up to the paranoia and inferiority complex that Red is feeling in this moment that's coming from his energy. I actually kind of like that because, again, it's playing into the character. The paranoia is going up. He's playing into this deficiency. But Starscream always caves, though, when Megatron confronts him. And so they go through this whole thing. They get in, they get to the Negabator, and as soon as Megatron is there to confront, Starscream is so easy to flip and say, oh, no, I was doing this for you. Starscream is not leadership material. He never has been, but Megatron keeps him around, and I swear that's going to come to bite him in the ass. But during all this, the no-ray that Starscream has fixes Red Alert's malfunction. I'm not really sure how that works, The no-ray seems like it's always a bad thing, but in this case it seems to temporarily fix him. While his incompetence isn't necessarily on purpose here, it seems like Starscream always is the ruiner of the plan. So Red Alert getting back, he makes it so that the Decepticons can't take the Negavator and everything is better. Now Inferno showing how much he truly cares about his friend and partner in Red. And I feel like Inferno goes in to rescue Red Alert, and to me this is the distinguishing trait again of the Autobots and Decepticons. Even though they've let each other down, even though somebody has failed in their work as an Autobot, Inferno is going to go in there, save his friend, save his brother, and he's going to do anything that he can to. And Optimus Prime realizing the error of his ways throughout this episode is a great way to kind of bring the character back in line. And his line of, I should have been the one to go in when Inferno went in to rescue them. We all lose our ways sometimes. It's going to happen. But the greatest leaders end up coming back and realizing the error in their ways, and Optimus Prime did that. So this episode, to me, if you try and bring it to today's times, it almost kind of speaks to mental health issues we hear about today. Because while obviously not a direct correlation, Red Alert and his paranoia, not feeling great, seeming like everybody's against him, and his friends, the Autobots, not really understanding what's going on. I mean, this is very common in the 80s where therapy and things like that were seen as kind of taboo. And even today, some people of a certain generation have a difficult time hearing about the idea of mental health. And so if there was sort of a real world correlation for today, I think that would be it for me. But I love that the Autobots call Red Alert Red. It kind of makes me feel like they're old drinking buddies. They've known him for a long time. Again, it sort of plays into that camaraderie that the Autobots have. Red Alert was showcased heavily in this episode, and he hasn't really been seen all the way up until this point, but we do get a good look at him. We get a good look at his function within the group, and I think it's great, and I hope that, again, this is something we're going to see more often because we've seen some of these in the periphery. For instance, I believe Red Alert is in the opening for every single episode in Season 2, so now we kind of understand who he is, and we understand what he is all about. Other than that, though, there was a typical plot with typical plot holes for Transformers. It's a fine episode, but the character development is really what made it rise to the top. Have you watched this episode recently? How do you feel about Red Alert as a character? I would love to know. mattyicemedia@gmail.com. Say hello, give me some suggestions, things you like, things you don't, things you want to hear me talk about. I always love to hear from people who are listening to this podcast because it seems to be growing. The listenership is, and I'm so grateful for it. I want the interaction to come with it. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, I'd love a review, some stars, anything that you can do to make the show more engaging, and anything that you can do to make it more findable. Hope this finds everybody well, fam. Hope this finds everybody safe. I will talk to you all next week, as always, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. This is Energon Entries. The opinions and viewpoints expressed on Energon Entries are those of Matt Freitz and his guests, and not necessarily those of the Matty Ice Media Network. Energon Entries is exclusively owned by Matt Freitz and is brought to you by the Matty Ice Media Network.